Hello, everyone. This is Scott Roberts with Explore Scientific, and it's my special honor to introduce everyone to Dianna Colman, who is the chair of the Yerkes Future Foundation. As recently as May 1st, they've had some really exciting news where the University of Chicago has officially handed over the historic Yerkes Observatory to this nonprofit organization. Thanks for joining us, Dianna.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Scott.
Yes. Uh, Maybe you can give us a little bit of backstory about the about yourself and also the Yerkes Future Foundation and some of what happened. A lot of our listeners might know this already about the University of Chicago's intention to shut down the observatory, but you know it best.
Well, I'll give you a little bit more than a backstory. I'll give you a little bit of romance as well.
Okay.
I first moved out to Wisconsin in 1978. I was recruited by Johnson Wax in Racine, and I started dating a very nice man, and he had a family home, summer home, in the Geneva Lake area. So he said to me one day, "Would you like to come out and see it? And there's a building I think you might enjoy." And I said, "Okay." So he came out with me, or I came out with him, I should say, and we went over to Yerkes Observatory, and I fell in love. I fell in love with him, but I also fell in love with Yerkes Observatory.
That is a story.
And so since 1978, I've probably been in there 20, 30, 40 times a year or around the building and the property just to look at it, to see it. So when the University of Chicago announced that they needed to close it because it wasn't cutting edge anymore,
Right.
I was heartbroken. I really was. And I spoke with a lot of people in the community, and together with several other people, we formed the Yerkes Future Foundation. And over a course of, 18 months, we put together a proposal, we put together ideas, how we would do research, plans, fundraising, everything,
Hmm.
and worked with the University of Chicago. And last fall, so in roughly October, came to an agreement in terms, agreement in principle. And at that point, we knew we were moving forward, but we had to be relatively quiet about it. So
And why was that? Why did you have to be?
we didn't want to put the cart before the horse. We wanted to make sure we actually had everything nailed down before we made any announcement. So we knew we were close.
Mhm.
We started working very diligently on all of the things that you have to look at in terms of the grounds, the electricals, the building itself, the telescope, everything.
Right.
And in mid-February, we reached an agreement with the University of Chicago, and we made the announcement in March. And since that point, we've been on roller skates. On
Uh,
May 1st, which was last week, we signed the agreements. We did the closing the same way you would do a closing on a house, except this is a really big, big house.
yes.
Yeah. We're moving forward. We have the keys to the front door. We have one employee named Ed Struble, who's been there for almost 30 years.
Right.
And he's been a godsend to us. He knows everything. He knows a lot of people. He knows all of the inner workings. He has all of the history. So we've been really fortunate. So that's our sole employee right now.
Hmm.
And we're in the process of making sure that the envelope of the building, the exterior of the building, the dome, the brickwork, the terracotta is all solid and sound. And then we're going to start probably in about 4 or 5 weeks working on some of the repairs that need to be done for the brickwork, and then also start on refurbishing the giant refracting telescope. And hopefully in the fall, we'll be able to open it up a little bit. We have some permitting issues with the village that we have to get through, but we can't get through that until they can actually have a public meeting. We're not worried about it. Everybody's been very supportive, but we have to follow the rules.
Oh, sure, sure. And you have, and that I think that's why you've been successful all along. So, of course, I've been following it as closely as I
Yes.
can, and I've been tried to be a good cheerleader to get people behind Yerkes Observatory and the Yerkes Future Foundation. Um, I really never had any doubt that you would succeed. You and I had some conversations early on, and I know that there were trying times, and I think that one of the big obstacles was a certain letter put out by Charles Yerkes when he was still alive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, Maybe you can talk a little bit more about this, but that letter basically put in place some stipulations.
There's a reversionary clause in the bequest that Charles Yerkes made to the University of Chicago. And it basically says that you have to continue astronomical observations
Hmm.
or it reverts to the heirs. I've met many of the Charles Yerkes heirs. They're fabulous individuals, wonderfully warm and welcoming. They're fully supportive of the observatory itself. They have been very they keep the communication lines wide open with us,
Hmm.
and they're talking to us all along. We actually took a trip down to New Orleans and met with, I think, five of them
Wow.
to talk through everything. Very hospitable, wonderfully curious about all of our plans. I'm so excited to have them as part of the fabric of moving forward. And when we do actually have the gala grand opening ribbon cutting ceremony,
Right.
I'm going to have multiple pairs of scissors just for them because they're just wonderful individuals.
That's fantastic. Now,
Mhm.
being that they were the heirs, and basically this letter said that if University of Chicago stopped operating it, it would go
Mhm.
to them. Did they then in turn hand it back, or what has happened that has changed this
Well,
particular letter?
not much really, because what the University of Chicago did during the entire time that the observatory was closed to the public was that they kept working with the telescopes. So various faculty members from the University of Chicago did exercise the telescopes and they came up and did astronomical observations. So they stayed within the letter of the bequest. So it really was a very smooth transition in that regard to the Yerkes Future Foundation. And we will continue that as well. We've had a lot of good contact with the faculty at the University of Chicago, as well as some amazing librarians and archivists there.
Hmm.
And they will come up and help us with some of the telescope work and also going through the collections to make sure that we are aware of what's critically important and what is not. So we have a very good working relationship with them. And we've got some very interesting proposals already from some of the colleges and universities in the general Midwest area who would like to come out here and do collaborative research with some of their colleagues. So there's a
Excellent.
lot of good stuff starting to bubble up.
Yeah.
It's it's a bit overwhelming at times, but it's very exciting.
Right. And so, you know, by the time of course, I've known about Yerkes Observatory since childhood.
Hmm.
Back in about 2017, I was invited to come up. Was surprised to see a lot of our eyepieces being used on the telescope, which was a moment of personal pride for me. But it was wonderful to see this over 100-year-old refractor working as well as it does. The images through it are fantastic, and the living when you're in there, that living history that you feel. I,
Hmm.
you know, I don't even know how to really put this into words. Okay, um, because I don't want to be like tongue in cheek or sound cheesy right now, but that you feel it. You feel that living history. You feel It's like it's coming through the walls in front of the telescope and just in the air when you're there. As soon as
Well,
you walk on the grounds.
there's two comments I'll make. A little boy who came there frequently was asked why he enjoyed it so much, and he said, "Every time I come in here, I feel smarter."
Yeah.
So that's part of it. But what we're trying to do as we go through and clean things up and refurbish and make it a more open environment for researchers and scientists
Mm-hmm.
is keep that sensation that you're talking about in place, because we really believe that when you have someone who can come up and work with two or three colleagues or work independently and just have a space where they feel like they can just think clearly, that it really is what lent itself for years to scientific exploration and discoveries made at Yerkes Observatory. And I think that can happen again. I really do.
I believe it can too. I believe it can too. Even and it may not be certainly the on the bleeding edge of research, but I think what makes telescopes perform to different levels. This happened at Palomar Observatory, for example. They started putting different electronic packages onto the instrument that were way more sensitive than the electronic packages that they had before. So there are ways that they can improve this, and a 40-inch refractor probably has some unique attributes that are very well
Mhm.
suited for maybe, I don't know, exoplanet transits, all kinds of things that run on research that still needs to be done from the ground.
And
Plus,
it,
also there are undergraduates that need to do
yeah,
research.
exactly.
They can't always get access to the biggest and best telescopes because of the competition to get to them. But I imagine that Yerkes will have its own competition. Who wouldn't want to spend some time that Edwin Hubble cut his teeth on, and Carl Sagan cut his teeth on, and where George Ellery Hale did all that research. I mean, the list of astronomers it can fill a phone book. It is.
It's
Uh,
incredible.
what's that?
It's incredible.
It's
And
incredible, right? Right.
we've been contacted by several young, and I mean in their early 20s, young people who have come forward and said, "I need to help you because I was a young astronomer there and took classes there." We've had others who've come forward and say, "I really just want to be there helping you with this." And so it's been fascinating because the young people are just as enthusiastic about this as the ones who have been doing this for years and years. So that's been a real gratifying experience. But there's one in particular who's coming home to the Lake Geneva area, who is studying for her master's thesis at the Rhode Island School of Design. And she called us up one day and she said, "I'll be there for the summer. What can I do to help you?" And we're so excited because we've now sent her the plans for the building. We've sent her architectural drawings. She is just wonderfully enthusiastic, and she was in the Young Astronomers program for 3 years.
Wow.
So that's going to be a really good addition to our staff for the summer.
That's fantastic. So that inspiration has probably affected more people than we'll ever know.
Yes.
The Aside from being a place of inspiration, though, and a place that will do some research,
Mm-hmm.
it will be a place, I'm sure, for educational outreach. What could you tell us about the Yerkes Future Foundation and its ideas for educational outreach
That's a little
to the
tricky
public?
right now. Yeah, it's tricky right now for an unusual reason. When we go to hire an executive director for Yerkes Observatory,
Mm-hmm.
how that person looks forward will in part shape how the educational program moves forward. And we probably will be posting that job description within the next week to 10 days. The committee is taking the last long look to make sure we all have the details correct
Mm-hmm.
and put it on our website. And or information will go out through the various individuals who've been so incredibly supportive so that they can filter it through. But once that executive director is in place, it will be up to that person to form a team of employees, a team of people who really love the observatory, but have different skills. And that's when the educational program will start to lay itself in.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's fantastic. And I know that you can't predict exactly what dates are going, you think that you'll be open. You mentioned something maybe in the fall or perhaps even as late as winter. But I think that the observatory kind of shuts down during the winter months just because the the weather conditions themselves force that to happen.
Yeah, Wisconsin can be a challenge.
It's cold up there.
But it is cold up there, and as you know, with the dome, the external temperature and the internal temperature have to be the same,
Right.
because that way you protect that telescope and you don't have any distortion. So in the winter, it's a little tricky, but one of the things that we're fighting, obviously, is the COVID-19 issues in the state of Wisconsin. So we have to be exceptionally aware of all of the distancing and the regulations, and make sure that we keep all of our staff and all of our visitors safe and healthy, because that's the most important part in the long run. It really is.
Right. Of course. Of course.
Mm-hmm.
So, gosh, there's so many other things I could ask you, Dianna, and we only have a little bit of time. But
Mm-hmm.
and I know that it must be like a fire hose of all the different aspects. I mean, you have a
Yeah.
new website, you've got new URLs. What are those going to be again?
Very straightforward. YerkesObservatory.com
Uh-huh.
and YerkesObservatory.org.
Wow.
They should be up and operating probably by the end of this week.
And
We
you
had to make
mentioned there's even some story behind those URLs, right?
yes. One of the most gracious gentlemen that you ever could meet, Kevin McCarran, and his wife, Connie Gardner, when the University of Chicago announced that they were going to close the observatory, Kevin and Connie secured those URLs and held them for us so that when we were ready, they could transfer them over. So it's very, very sweet. Everyone here has been remarkably supportive. There's not a single day that we don't get some email, phone call, contact that just says, how can I help? What can I do? I need to help you. It's been wonderful, including you.
Oh, well, who wouldn't want to help Yerkes Observatory? It,
Mm-hmm.
it is the cradle of astrophysics. It is it is the one instrument, I believe, that set our country on the pacing to go to the moon and to map the genome and all the things, all the amazing science things that and imagination that's come from this country. Okay, got a huge kickstart with Yerkes Observatory. If you
Indeed.
haven't read the history about this, you should at least look at the Wikipedia page about it. I imagine that the observatory website, yerkesobservatory.com or .org, will have history pages devoted to it. But there's so many exciting things that you can do. I hope that you and I can get together a few months down the road and talk about what's coming next. So
I'm very happy. I'm very excited. I am a bit overwhelmed right now, and I'm trying to balance things off as much as possible, but
and have a life maybe.
and have a life. But the reality of it is, this is so important, not just to this community, we have heard from people across the United States, Japan, France, Canada, just everywhere
Around the world. Yeah.
around the world. It's really it's daunting in a way, but so worth doing. It is just so worth doing.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
believe Yerkes Future Foundation will solidly, I can't even pronounce it right, keep the observatory running into the next century, for another 100 years. And so, um, the observatory, and you, Dianna, belong to a new organization called the Alliance of Historical
Correct.
Observatories.
Correct.
Certainly, Yerkes Observatory is a charter member of that. For this announcement on May 1st, that this team was like going, yeah, this is a huge win for our organization, which also includes Lick Observatory, Mount Wilson, Griffith, and several others. Lowell Observatory, and the Vatican Observatory, and will in the future include many more. But
Right.
this is like a major win, and we hope that all historical observatories like Yerkes will
Hmm.
get the support and
Hmm.
the visionary leaders behind it to keep them going. And the reason why it's important, I believe, is because of the inspiration that they give people. And it is that inspiration that makes people do the impossible.
Right.
So, yeah.
I agree with you completely. And a big shout out to all of the founding members of the Alliance of Historic Observatories, because what they have done in terms of just sending support and information to the Yerkes Future Foundation as we move forward has been unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Right.
So they're a great group. Great group.
Right. Well, I don't know the names of all the people that have been involved. Maybe the list is too long, but we certainly thank you, Dianna. Um, you were steadfast. You were strong. You kept things going when it looked bleak, and so uh, congratulations.
Oh,
And
thank
I'm sure that I could be shaking hands and congratulating person after person after person until my hand was worn out. But um, anyways, it's very exciting, and we'll be
you.
back in a few months to talk to you about more exciting things to come at Yerkes Observatory.
Great. Thanks so very much, Scott. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Okay.